Next, I've moved to the front now. Two rules of thumb about the front with a fender flare on a long nose car. You can see in a long nose, you do have this extra sheet metal here because you're going to have a turn. You have a turn signal in a long nose. In a long nose, in a short nose, you don't have a turn signal. You have this big IROC type looking bumper that comes right here, and there's not a turn signal. And a horn grill in a short hood. So this is a long hood. So 930 fender flares. These flares existed after. Again, this is a 930 turbo flare, and we're talking in the front. Two rules of thumb about this: the starting point for alignment when you install is to make sure that on this lower lip right here, you have about pretty much I'm not going to get a ruler, but you pretty much, this is level. This is 90 degrees to the car for the original front fender right here. So that is like 90 degrees right there. So I'm going with that. Then the second rule of thumb that you need to meet is that in the middle at the highest point, when you use a digital level or a bubble level, the highest point of right at your original fender, you seek out the highest point there, and it'll be right above your axle. You want to make the new 930 flare level with the highest point of your original wheel well, part of the fender right there. So this is level. Now what you get with these flares is an effect where once you match up the bottom corner here, so this is, if you look in towards the car, this is flush here. Once this flare comes up and it's level with your original fender here, you can see it's level at the highest point. It's going to look like it comes out. It's not going to follow the trace of, at least this is a 930, this is a 912, 1968 long nose. It looks like the fender flare doesn't match my original wheel well, but it doesn't. So the shape of it is a little bit different. And in fact, when you have a tire in a long nose, at least with this 68 912, when a tire is on the wheel hub, there's about a 2-inch clearance here in the back and a 1-inch clearance in the front. So on at least this 68 912 long nose car, the clearance between the tire and the front fender, this was about 1 inch, and then in the rear, it was 2 inches. The rubber tire, the surface of the rubber tire was about 2 inches from the fender. So you can't. I mean, it's not worth measuring this because you're getting. This is a delete of your original. So that describes why, as this flare comes up, this is a pure semicircle. So now you're putting a pure semicircle that's leveled here on a circle that's not, this is not a half circle here, a semicircle. It's not part of a circle because it doesn't, you know that your tire is going to be circular. But so when the wheel's on and you have a 2-inch clearance here and then a 1-inch clearance here, your original fender on your long nose was not a pure semicircle. It kind of it had more meat here. What I'm saying is, if it was purely a circle, and you would get 2-inch clearance from your tire in the front, but you don't. You get 1-inch clearance. So the original fender comes this way on this car. That's why when it's an illusion. That's why when you're installing the flare, the new flare is going to come out, and you're going to go, oh, something's off. Well, it's not. The new flare is a pure circle, but your old fender is not. This is not a circle here. This is not a half of a circle here. But the new flare is a semicircle. So the only two things you can do are line up here and then level here in the center, and then this is going to come out forward. You see how that looks? You're going to think something's screwed up there from the center. This something's wrong here, but it's not. And in fact, this takes a considerable amount of time to describe up front. Now there's a mistake some people have used when installing the front 930 fender flares on a long nose car. And the mistake is that the installer will take this lower edge of the front of the flare and then extend it and then move the flare so it matches up here. Well, what happens when you do that is you get cut off here. You've just lost now about 1/2 of an inch. This new flare will then drop. As you drop the nose, the front leading edge of this flare down here, which is incorrect. That's an erroneous assumption. If you drop this to match this and then think it's over, right? I just need to weld in on the front and then on the remaining edge here. That's erroneous. That's an erroneous assumption. It's incorrect. Because what needs to be done is match. You need to level this here. You need to start here in the front. Make sure that's flush. And then at the highest point of the new flare, make sure that's level with your current fender. It's going to look like something's wrong here. And then as long as these two are met, and that's met, you're done. Then you bolt the flare in. You don't do anything up here. This comes later, okay? So the two requirements, the two rules of thumb for the front flare installation are: number one, make this lower bottom edge, make that flush with the bottom corner of your fender. And you don't care what happens over here, because you're going to cut this, you're going to cut part of the flare off here, because you don't want this. This is the door here. This has to be cut off. So make this flush. Worry about this later by cutting the new flare. Make that flush. Level this, the highest point of the new flare, and then your old fender. Those are level. And then it's going to, because you can see in the orange wheel well here, that's not a pure circle, but the new fender is a pure circle. So that's going to give you your 2-inch clearance here. You can see that that's going to come down. That's going to give you, this curve as it continues is going to come down here, and that's what gives you about the 2-inch clearance here. Now with the wheels on, you're going to be measuring the distance from your rubber, which is the best thing you can do, over here to center as well. But you have to meet the two requirements. One here, you have to meet the level requirement here, and then the front, you just let that go. And then you screw in here. As long as I screwed this in, installation and setting this up, what I'm saying here is that the final installation of this front flare was completed when number one, this was flush, and number two, the highest point of the new flare and my original wheel well was level by a digital angle meter right there. Done. What happens here? Let that go. And then screw in. And then finally, moving forward, what you have to do is then one of the recommendations is to go in, now looking up, one of the recommendations is to go into your original sheet metal here and scribe a line and then cut that, and then this part you bend out this way. So you cut here and then bend your original steel out this way. This is going to be hard. It's not going to be an exact match, but you can try the best to the extent possible to match this curve up. If this doesn't work, I'll just break out some 16 gauge sheet steel and just have a hammer and dolly party and just try to make that match. And just I can cut a new piece of 16 gauge right here and then try to merge that up after a lot of shaping on it. The only thing is you're going to have to do some pretty good shaping with this roll here. So that's going to take some work. If I do decide just to cut a piece of 16 gauge and then just come out from here and then just do it manually. And then naturally my RSR 1973 2.8 front fiberglass bumper was installed when I did this, so the match. But that bumper there's play in that. You can move this plus or minus about an inch, so it can move out. Because I have, as you know, for the mounts of your bumper, there's 3 holes here that I can use, so I can have any type of aluminum bracket that I want, and then epoxy into the RSR fiberglass bumpers. But the recommendation in the front, once you screw this flare in, is to scribe a line on your original sheet metal behind this, and then once you cut, pull this out to try to meet up with this lip here, and it should come pretty close. It's not, you're going to have to, you can see how this rolls in. This is a curve like this here, and then this is this rolls in here. It's an opposite roll, so you have to do some shaping there. But then once you leave, the height that you want when you're done is right here. That's where your turn signal is, here. So you need to leave this intact. But so there you have it. The 2 rules of thumb for the front, here, level here, and then you are done, as long as, because you do have play with your RSR fiberglass bumper here. So in the front, 2 rules of thumb, then get your tech screws in. Worry about this later, where you can cut. There's also part of your, if you look back in here where you have your sheet steel screws for the fender. The fender bolts in on a piece of sheet steel that goes through like this. So there's going to be a piece of steel behind this that goes like this, and you're going to have to cut through that. And then here you would stay away from this, so I'm going to stay about a 1/2 inch or even more, 3/4 of an inch down here. And then I'll cut the flare here and then come in the bottom. And the only welding is going to be right way down here in the bottom. So this will all be cut off, because that's the door right here. This is over the door. So cut, problem solved, weld in the bottom. There you have it. A little bit about the inside.